Hello and welcome to Ink vs. Algorithm. I am your host, Mookie Spitz, and I'm thrilled to have on board Jeff Krell, celebrated writer and cartoonist of the series Jayson, Jayson. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, and thank you for spelling it.
That's very important, right?
So if you want to find
him on Amazon. And I can't wait to dig into your story, how you started writing Jayson, how it came to evolve, comic strips, graphic novels, maybe even one day a Netflix miniseries, at least
film and television.
It's on Hulu, right?
Stage and screen, who knows?
Stage and screen. We all aspire to that. Let's dig in.
Well, thank you for having me, Mookie. It was so nice to meet you last weekend.
Was it already last weekend? It really was, wasn't it?
Time flies.
WonderCon.
It was.
The Anaheim Convention Center.
What a wonder it was.
Indeed it was. And I saw you there and I said, hey, Jeff, Jayson, talk Jayson, Jeff, be on the podcast. And ta-da!
Right.
Here you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your writing.
Okay, happy to talk about that. I woke up this morning and I was thinking, wow, I've been doing this for 43 years. Where does the time go? And so I've been doing it for so long with the same set of characters, really.
Did you start when you were 1 year old?
No, here's what happened is I was just like my character, who was based on me back in the day. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania Dutch country, grew up gay, had to leave because whatever was out there had to be superior to what I was experiencing. And I got into the University of Pennsylvania, and so I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and not just college, but the Ivy League. And so I thought, well, that's the American dream. That's what you're supposed to do. And then people hand you jobs and things. And I studied what interested me, which was German and communications, double major. Found out that was a road to pre-unemployment. Or, well, underemployment. I always worked, but I had some dreams about working in international marketing or advertising, and those dreams were quickly shattered. So what happened in the 6 months after I graduated, I retreated and started creating a comic strip. I created the comic strip that I think I'd always wanted to read but never saw. I grew up much more with Archie comics and with teen humor comics generally than with the superheroes. I read a few of them, but I like humor. And I love the whole genre of teen humor comics. And Archie is like the last publisher standing that's still doing it in any meaningful way. But I certainly at that point never seen any gay characters or seen myself represented. I always said that I felt represented by Sabrina the Teenage Witch because she lived in Riverdale with the other kids, but she had a secret. Was certainly the family friendliest among them. But I love that style of storytelling. So it made sense if I was going to tell my story and the story of my friends that I was going to do it in that style. When I started doing Jayson and the critics started piling on. First of all, they all told me I wasn't doing gay right, whatever that means. But also, and I love this one. One critic described me as a writer who sort of draws.
Well, that's ironic, especially with the popularity of South Park now, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I grew up with Archie and with Peanuts also. And I think what Charles Schulz did was so amazing because it was deceptively simple. And what he spawned was a lot of writers who don't draw very well, who thought that they could do it as well as Schultz, because his drawings were so simple, uh, but he knew his craft. I can't say that for everyone today. I can't, you know what? I can't say it for myself either. I was imitating the styles of the greats who drew for Archie Comics, and I did my best. And that's the way I wanted to tell my stories. So what happened was, I created this world of characters that were based on myself and my friends at the time, who were newly minted college graduates. Jayson's best friend was named Arena Stage. She was based on my best friend in college named Andrea Jartman. There were three main characters when the strip started. It was Jayson and Arena and his ex-boyfriend Walter, who was based on my ex-boyfriend Scott. And Scott had already taken up with someone else named Steven. And I was so pissed about that I just called him Steven. I didn't even change his name, just so people would know. So I wrote two 12-panel strips, and they were configured like 3 across 4 down to fit on a magazine page. Because I thought, if I'm going to get this published anywhere, the only place I know that is publishing gay comics was The Advocate, which is, and still is, I guess, a big LGBT magazine. So I drew 2 of the 12-panel strips, and I sent them off to The Advocate, and I never heard anything, never heard back. But I liked where I was going with this, and I thought I was living in Philadelphia after I graduated from Penn, and there was a very well-regarded, one of the oldest continuing gay publications, a weekly called the Philadelphia Gay News, or PGN. It continues in web form these days, but it was, like everything else, it was newsprint back in the day. And so I took these, I got a meeting with the publisher of the Philadelphia Gay News. I showed him my 12-panel strips, and he liked the idea of an original cartoon that was locally created, and he didn't have anything like that. But he said all he wanted was 6 panels. So he took the first 6 panels of the 12-panel strip and said that he would run that. And I said, well, it doesn't have an ending. And he said, it'll be fine. And I guess it was, because it ran for a while in the Philadelphia Gay News. And so that's how I got my start. Now, the publisher liked what I was doing. The editor did not. And the editor did everything in his power to get rid of me. And succeeded after about a year. But now I had a pile of strips, a pile of 6-panel strips. And along the way, I acquired a new roommate who was into underground comics, which I didn't even know existed. I grew up with the mainstream. I was reading Archie. And then I found out in the early 80s that these things called underground comics, like Robert Crumb and Aileen Kominsky, and the women's comics, like Pudge Girl Blimp. Anyone remember that fondly? They were being published, and they were lawless. They were outside of the rules of what you could do and say and be in
That was
comics.
the whole point.
Yeah. It was very freeing. So one of those publications was Gay Comics. It was published by Kitchen Sink, and through my roommate, I became aware of this whole world that I didn't know existed, including gay comics. And there were 4 issues had been published by then by Dennis Kitchen. And so I got them, and I thought, well, this might be a good place for. Initially, I just wanted to resell the strips that I had done because I didn't get paid very much money for them. So I bundled them up and I sent them off to the editor, and the editorship had just changed hands. I don't know if you know much about the history of gay comics, but the first 5 issues, I believe, were edited by Howard Cruz, the late, great Howard Cruz. And then he passed on the editorship to someone named Robert Triptow. And it was Robert Triptow who received the package. with my 6-panel strips in it, and he liked them, but he he did something that changed my life. He did a couple of things. He took a look at them and he said that he liked the characters, he liked where it was going, but he didn't want to just reprint the strips, and asked me if I would try my hand at stories. And I hadn't thought about that, but uh, I had just come back from my 5-year high school reunion back in Lehighton, Pennsylvania, uh, to which I had taken Andrea Jartman. Uh, and I thought, well, that could be a premise for a good story. Uh, we get to meet Jayson and Arena and see their relationship, and also see where Jayson came from. So I wrote this story uh, called Jayson Goes Home, and it was 7 pages long, and I sent it off. Well, I didn't draw it up yet. Robert asked me if I would just like doodle it first, because he wanted to see that it worked. And so I wrote and then doodled a 7-page story, like storyboards, uh, sent them off to him. He photocopied it, cut and pasted it, made it into a 6-page story with better pacing, and sent it back to me and said, draw it this way, and I'll publish it. So he's the first person who really taught me about story structure. Because I just wrote the story, and I wrote until I filled a page in comics and just continued. And some writers do it that way, and it can be done, but it's much better for the reader if you structure each page with a beginning, middle, and end, uh, which he taught me. Because then you end on a good joke, or you end on a reason to turn the page and continue reading. So that was very instructive for me, and it also helped me later when I tried my hand at syndicating the strip, because then I could tell stories, but each page stood alone, and made people want to read next week and come back. So that was Jayson Goes Home was published in issue 6 of Gay Comics. So I guess these days I'm kind of considered part of the first wave of gay cartoonists. I caught the very end of the first wave, I think. But so that was the beginning of what turned out to be two very good relationships for publishing, because I got a berth in every issue of Gay Comics after that, and started thinking about what other stories I want to tell. And shortly after I started doing that, another a publication, a series, or what turned into a series of gay male comics anthologies called Meat Men, unfortunately titled. But the first gay superhero was named Meat Man, and so there's a reason for the title. And the publisher contacted me and asked me if I would do stories for him as well. So between them, I got to tell a lot of Jayson's stories. So the first one was published. I went national then in Gay Comics in 1985 with issue 6, and continued to run in Gay Comics and in Meat Men for Meat Men was 21 volumes, I think I did. And so a lot of stories over a lot of years, ending probably in the early 90s is when all of this sort of had its last gasp. So I want to tell you a story about how the publisher, Winston Leyland, of the Meat Men series really opened up my notions of storytelling. He'd been going along and publishing volume after volume of the Meat Men series, and then he got to volume 12, and he informed me that it was going to have a science fiction theme. And my first response was, well, I'll see you in volume 13. Because I'm not really a fan of science fiction. No shade, but it's just I think a lot of it is just hokey and not done very well. But then he begged and he pleaded. He said, "Oh, please." And I thought about it, and I thought about what don't I like about science fiction, as well as how did they handle this in the Archie comics, right? Because the Archie comics were primarily comedic. But once you trust your characters, you can take them anywhere. And there were some Archie stories that were dramatic. There were some that were, and they did science fiction stories. Uh, and they did dream sequences and fantasy stories. And it's like once you know who your characters are, you can take them anywhere. So I said, well, what if I take these characters as they are and plunge them into a science fiction plot and have them react just as they would, just as I would. The story became Jayson visits Planet 69. And I had such great fun doing it. And it helped me really explore the characters a little more by putting them in a different situation. And so when Winston came along again, and that did very well for him, he decided to do another one in volume 15, and I was right there. I'm like, oh, okay, I've got stories. I can send my characters anywhere now. And so ever since then, uh, because there are kind of three eras to Jayson. There was the era during which I did strips and stories for whoever would publish them. And then the era of self-publishing dawned, and so I started publishing my own graphic novels. And so since then, I always make it a point of including a science fiction story in each volume because they're fun, and it gives you a rest from reality. And also, I'm sure you've discovered this as a writer. It's a way to comment on society. It's a way to comment on your characters by putting them in unfamiliar situations. So, questions for me before I go on?
So just to summarize a little bit, it sounds like you've been using your comic strip character Jayson as in ways a catharsis and an extension of yourself emotionally. You took biographical details, your lover, your friends, and they became characters. And the comic strip has evolved with you and your life and what you've seen of the world. And I think that that's really cool. And, back in the 80s, it was still a very restrictive environment for gay people. You had the AIDS crisis in full bloom as well. There was stigmatization. There was homophobia. How has it evolved in a way where you feel much more comfortable and empowered as a gay writer? And do you think your writing has helped you? And do you think that kind of gay writing has helped society to become more open and more welcoming of the gay community?
Well, I sure hope so. Certainly in the beginning, it was cathartic for me, and what I was writing was a lot more biographical, autobiographical, just ripped from the headlines. I was doing this comic strip for the Philadelphia Gay News, and so every week it was like, well, what am I gonna rant about? What am I gonna complain about this week? And try to make it funny. So a couple of things. First of all, the environments in which I created were, for the most part, very welcoming. So I felt kind of freed from the homophobia that was surrounding me, and I didn't really write a lot about that, other than with Jayson's parents. Yeah,
You felt comfortable. You were with a gay paper, and then
right.
you were home, so to speak. Okay.
Yeah, so what I was trying to do, it was character comedy, and some of the characters happened to be gay. I didn't deal a lot with the oppression in the outside world or homophobia. Um, it was I played the relationships. At first, it was with Jayson and his roommate, gal pal Arena. Um, we were allowed to call them fag hags back then. Uh,
Also ironic because it was a lot more fun in ways back then.
Right. So you were asking about whether it became less restrictive over time, and honestly, in some ways, I feel like it's become more, as everything has become corporatized and mainstreamed, including gay themes. There's a lot more pressure to be inclusive and sensitive, and a lot of stuff that I wrote about in the '80s might be considered problematic now, I mean, it was very freeing in that I was working in underground comics and there were no rules. It's like now, as I'd say gay stories have become mainstream, but at the same time, there's more pressure to conform uh, to certain expectations about what you're allowed to say and how you're allowed to say it. A couple of things happened over time. Of course, Will and Grace went on the air, and now since I've been doing uh, this story with a gay man and his straight female roommate, um, and the fabulous drag queen who lives next door, Robin Ricketts. Um,
Great
by
name.
the night, thank you. Also based on a real person, and that real person has an Irish surname, and so up until the very almost when I had to turn it in, I had called him Robin O'Ricketts, and it just didn't sit well. It didn't work for me, and I cut out the O. He became Robin Ricketts, and he lives in infamy. So by the late '90s, early 2000s, when I'd been doing this for a while, and going to conventions, then I had people coming up and saying, "Oh, it's just like Will and Grace." I'm like, "Yeah, but I did it first."
This is interesting, the backlash to the backlash.
Yeah. And now, speaking of which, uh, when I go to conventions, sometimes I mean people, my characters are based on me and my friends, and so I've tried to expand that universe a little bit. Uh, but people look at what I'm doing now, and some of them say, you know, where are your trans characters of color? Uh, so uh, I think there's pressure to address all the letters of the alphabet in the LGBTQIA MOUSE family.
And that's kind of ironic. This backlash to the backlash of woke, anti woke, now MAGA as this counter strike to the counter strike, and
Mm-hmm.
this idea of censorship and cancel culture is one of the vestiges of, I think, the liberal movement that really tried to fix things. They felt that there were disenfranchised minorities, there was bias, racism, misogyny, homophobia. The government had to come in to fix it, and society had to fix it. And with that came a morality policing, which has impacted stand up comics, writers, cartoonists, such as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you, as a gay writer, feel it, and it's kind of ironic.
It's true. I employ a lot more self censorship now than I did in the '80s when I was because pre-AIDS, gay men and lesbians didn't get along, and I wrote about that. I wrote about the AIDS crisis. Uh, I wrote about uh, Arena Stage, who was based on Andrea Jartman, my friend from college. Uh, she It was important for her to have friends all over the rainbow. It's as if she made friends because they checked a box.
She was
I,
your identity politics friend.
exactly, and I wrote about that, and I got a lot of criticism for that because and my editor at the time really defended me, uh, and he said to the critics who complained that I was holding up a mirror to a gay culture that doesn't like its own reflection.
You had Angels in America, which was
Mm,
aspirational archetype, if you will,
mm,
of the gay future, and that was
yeah.
embraced, and loved. But any kind of criticism or self reflection didn't always go over too well. People don't like
Mm,
that mirroring.
mhm. So yeah, a couple of things happened between from the '80s to the '90s. I told you about my foray into science fiction. And that freed me to tell all kinds of different stories. And the characters also over time started taking on lives of their own that were very different from the people who inspired them. And those people were no longer in my life. So I felt whenever I got a chance to revisit the strip and the characters that they lived in my head. And the best stories were the ones where I just threw an idea at them and they just channeled it. And I wrote the story based on how they reacted to it. Um, so I think as the '90s wore on and we were still dealing with AIDS and we were dealing with political correctness, uh, I just started having more fun with the strip and just I mean, it's always microcosmic. The characters hardly ever strayed out into the real world anyway. So, I mean, it's very much structured like a sitcom with basically one set, two sets ultimately, because Robin Ricketts, the drag queen next door, bought the building, became their landlord, and made over the bar downstairs in his own image. It was actually based on a real bar at 13th and Pine in Philadelphia called Dirty Frank's originally. In the early strips, you can see that. Then Robin bought it and he turned it into a drag bar uh, with a performing stage called Dietrich's with D apostrophe Trix, where he headlines as Marlena Dietrich, uh, except he doesn't shave his mustache, so we know it's him.
So that's the '90s, and then
Yeah.
how did things evolve into the new millennia? Because you had
Okay.
society changing around. We have our first black president.
Mm-hmm.
You've got gay marriage becomes illegal. You have a lot of legislation that's being mandated to protect gay rights, whether it's in the workplace and elsewhere. And things were looking good, better, I think, for the gay community, with some of the caveat that we've been mentioning that the morality police also started to
Sure.
do their own dirty deeds, which had their own repercussion, leading to
Mm-hmm.
cultural backlash.
Well, so how I deal with that is mostly not to deal with it. What I'd like to believe that what I'm trying to do is timeless. So I try not to deal with the cultural issues du jour so much anymore, but just tell a good character comedy. Uh, but what happened in the early aughts is I started self-publishing, and I started by publishing collections of the work I had done for others in the 80s and 90s. So I have two best ofs called Jayson with a Y, best of the 80s and best of the 90s. And I started taking them to comic book conventions, and people who knew me back then or knew my work from Meat Men or Gay Comics, or the brief period during which I syndicated it to various gay publications in local cities. Um, they were happy to see it all collected in one place, but the negative feedback that I got was, so when are you going to do some new stuff? But those two collections were well received, and there was one critic who wrote a whole survey of the strips and stories that were done by gay and lesbian creators during that era, and he declared that this is the one strip that stands the test of time, which is what I wanted. Uh, so, having learned how to self-publish, then and also having dabbled in screenwriting, where I enjoyed a larger canvas and I was telling one story over 2 hours or 120 pages, uh, I decided that instead of doing strips and stories, that I was going to do graphic novels. Uh, but because people were used to my stories being told in 6-page bites, I told the stories in chapters that were all self-contained, just like a story, but all built to something. And so the first of those was called Jayson Goes to Hollywood. And that was because in the early aughts, I moved to Los Angeles and had a lot to say about uh, people who live there.
That's a natural evolution from
Hmm.
the six panel strip to a graphic novel, and then dividing it up into these smaller chunks. So you kept
Right.
the spirit of the strip, contextualized it in a larger story, and then you explore a new modality.
Exactly. And what was gratifying for me, uh, when people who didn't know my work would come to the booth and say, I had several books at that point. I also translate for a German cartoonist, and I had that pile as well. So they said, where should I start? And with Jayson Goes to Hollywood, I brought the characters into the 21st century, and I told one complete story where you didn't need to know all the history of the last 20 years. And any history you needed to know was embedded uh, brilliantly in the somewhere in the subtext, or uh, somewhere in the establishing dialogue. So I would invite them to start there, and because it was broken up into these chunks, I said, just take it home tonight and read the first story, and just read one a night. And I had people come back the next day and said, I read the first story and I couldn't put it down. I read the whole book.
Well, that's the best criticism you can get, right? Just keep turning, keep.
Right. Yeah. And when I got people hooked with that one, then sometimes I could say, now you can go back and read the history, and I would sell them more books.
You've got your strips, then you did the collections, the best of 80s and the best of 90s. Then you've evolved into graphic novels with bigger stories with the same characters. To your point, you don't really need backstory just because a good story is a good story, right? And then what was next?
Well, I'd like to say film and television, which hasn't happened yet. But so next for me was Jayson's roommate, Arena, who was based on my friend Andrea Jartman, uh, threatened to steal every scene that she was in. So in fact, when I did my first graphic novel, because all of the strips and stories up until that point were just called Jayson, or the stories were called Jayson verb predicate, right? Jayson does something. Jayson gets a job. Jayson goes home, whatever. So when I started doing graphic novels, the first chunk, the first 6-page story that was not headlined by Jayson was called Arena Does Something, because I needed to give her own headline.
Well, that was the
So
Better Call Saul of your Breaking Bad franchise.
right. So Arena was I think she's a star in her own right, and I promised her someday that I would give her her own graphic novel. So there was this period between the 80s and 90s when Arena left Jayson, and you have to read the books to find out why. And she went to New York and went to work for her family's ad agency and moved in with her very different sister, the MBA. So I created a graphic novel called Arena Takes Manhattan, which is my most recent publication, and it's a standalone series of stories, again, strips and stories, um, featuring Arena and her sister learning to get along and learning to work together. It's a workplace comedy. It's kind of, I'd say it harkens back to Millie the Model and Katie Keene. It's a career girl humor comic. Um, and for that reason, it's also family friendlier. Because up until this point, the Jayson stories that I've done use 4-letter words. Characters find themselves in adult situations sometimes. And even though it looks like Archie when I'm at a convention and they're on display, kids come up and they think that it's that, and that it's for them. And so I have to kind of shoo them away. But now I have something I can give them, or at least someone who's old enough to understand the setting, which is the world of ad agencies. So, I mean, 10 and up. So, Arena Takes Manhattan has no dirty words or deeds in it. Um, it's still filled with arch dialogue, which I'm famous for, uh, and it's a fun read. Uh, so that's where I'm up to. There's going to be at least one more Jayson graphic novel in the series before I wind it up. I'm working on that now.
Great. Congratulations. And how do you do the marketing? You mentioned you go to the Wonder Cons and the
Mhm.
Con Cons, so you sell books in person.
Right.
So do social media outreach and engage with people online. Do you do paid advertising? How do you sell?
I've rarely done paid advertising, and when I've done it, I haven't found that it's paid off really well. Um, like it or not, I found the best form of marketing is one-on-one engagement with people at comic book conventions, whether they're fans who don't know that the story continued and that there's new stuff, or whether they know nothing about it, but I explain it to them and I have them flip through a book and they say it looks fun and they buy it. Uh, but I also I make everything available on Amazon. So if you just search on my name on Amazon, all of my books come up. So that's the way I sell outside of conventions. I always find, uh, even if I don't sell a lot of books at a convention, I also have cards and bookmarks and of course conversation that I have with people. And after a convention, I see a spike in sales on Amazon
Sure.
because some people just take a card or they remember that
Choose now when they walk by. They
they
just
do, and they say, because I mean, you've done conventions, so that they always say, "Oh, if only I had money," right? I'm like, "Why are you here?" um, but so I say, "Well, when you do have money, first of all, I say, well, we take cards." But beyond that, people do check me out later online. I have a website. I do need to update it. My publishing imprint is called Ignite Entertainment, so you can find all my stuff there. And it's mostly a portal that links you, takes you to Amazon to buy. Uh, so everything is available there. And as I, as I ease my way into retirement from my day job, I hope I will be able to devote more resources to marketing.
well, that's cool. It's a nice parallel pathway. And tell me a little bit about the group that you were embedded with
Mm,
at WonderCon, because there are a
sure.
bunch of
Um,
artists, had
mhm.
a cool vibe to it.
Well, thank you. I can take no credit for that, other than being there and part of the vibe, I guess. It's called Prism Comics, not Prison, which everyone's, what? No, I don't do those kinds of comics. People do, though. Prism, like the thing that makes the rainbow. It's a nonprofit
It's
that
a visual and literal pun.
exactly. So Prism Comics has been around since I believe 2004. Uh, I discovered them when I went to San Diego Comic Con for the first time, and it was meeting them that really inspired me to start self-publishing, because I felt like there's an outlet now. There's a place uh, where I can go to sell my stuff and be represented, which I didn't feel existed before. Uh, Prism is a nonprofit that represents LGBTQIA creators. They don't publish, they promote. And one of the things they do for us all is they buy the booth space and they set it up, and then arrange signings for us to come in and out. And so we don't have to do all that legwork. It's very nice.
Do you pay them a fee to facilitate this, and they do the organization, and then you're all grouped together, or do they sponsor
It's
your booth too?
they have they'll do it in a couple of different ways. They'll do booth partnerships where you pay a fee up front and then you keep 100% of your sales, or you can do signings and then they take 50%. But either way, it's absolutely worth it for the work that they do. And they also, for the last, I believe, three, four, I think this is the fourth year, they do something called QCon in West Hollywood, uh, which
Perfect.
I've been participating in from the start. And that's one of the few places where I have my own table.
So you collaborate and partner up with Prism most of the time you're out. Then is that right?
Sure.
So you guys
They
work.
don't do the East Coast so much because the principals, it's all volunteer,
Yeah.
but most of them are based on the West Coast, and the book inventory that they maintain is on the West Coast as well, and in and around Los Angeles. So they stopped doing New York. They stopped doing East Coast conventions. There's another organization there called Geeks Out that has a presence in New York, and so sometimes I partner with them as well.
Do they have a digital presence? Do they do digital promotion too, Prism, or is it mostly just in person?
They have a website, and they had for a long time an online store where they also sold our stuff,
So they
and
could
um,
resell your
I
stuff maybe, or
that
sell direct.
they shut that down. They were going to redesign it. Um, I don't think they ever finished. I think they lost their web mistress or something. I I used to sell a lot that way, and I gotta. I'm going to QCon in a couple of weeks, so I'll talk to Ted Abenheim about that. I'll see what's happening with the Prism online store, because it used to be a great place.
All right.
I hope they bring it back.
Do you have any advice for younger cartoonists that you could
Uh,
offer, whether gay or straight
yes,
or in between?
I do. First, I mean, I'd say don't give up your day job. Uh, Here's the thing. Uh, Whoever said do what you love and the money will come needs to be shot at dawn.
Yeah, Scott Galloway, the podcast pundit,
No,
former agency guy, NYU professor, says
yeah,
exactly the same thing.
I love him. I discovered him on Smirconish, and I think he's great. Right.
Be realistic about what your capabilities are.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you're dying to create something, then create it, um, because it'll feed your soul. It'll make you a better person. But don't assume you're going to make a living at it. And while you're pursuing it, make sure you do have a way to make a living to support your art, because your art probably won't support you. That's not a reason not to do it, but understand its place.
Many guests that I've had on the podcast, a lot of writers and creators I talk to, almost all of them have day jobs. Even
Mhm.
famous writers, award-winning writers, have day jobs.
Right.
So that doesn't preclude people from actually living their dream. They just need to live their dream when they have time for it, rather than having all that disposable time, let alone disposable income to really indulge themselves.
That's exactly right. If you're dying to tell a story, then tell it.
Yes,
Um,
don't wait.
no, let it out. Um, and great is the enemy of good. Good enough is, and any artist will tell you this. They'll look back on their early work and wish they could redraw it all, right? Uh, but you can only move forward, and you only know that now because you learned and you grew.
Right.
And that'll only happen if you do the work. Yeah, don't wallow in self-pity, and don't be discouraged by the idea that you're not going to make $1 million at it. Um,
So those are two really good best practices. What else
mhm.
can you give young artists?
Well, the other thing I would say is um, I'm a grateful guy for a lot of reasons, and I think that I'm grateful that I never did this full time, uh, and that I would always I've never had writer's block because I'm brimming with ideas, and finding the carving out the time to write it down and then draw it, or work with other artists as I did to some degree on the Arena book, uh, is it's such a gift to give yourself that time, uh, that if it's not fun, why are you doing it?
Good for
I
you.
always I
100.
always worried that if it became my full-time job, then it would become drudgery, and something I had to do.
And other people are telling you how to do it.
Well, that's always true. Um, I have to say, I mean, along the way, when I was doing the strips and stories, I had a very supportive editors and publishers, which makes a huge difference. And they paid, because sometimes, oh, I'm going to be published, and then you're fighting to get paid for 2 years, right?
Yeah,
Well, that's another reason to self-publish. Well, then you can not pay yourself.
exactly. If you can be broke and happy and creatively empowered, have
Cut
fun,
out the middleman.
enjoy it. And the last line on the spreadsheet is your own personal happiness and self satisfaction as a creator.
That's right.
Something nobody can take away from you, and
Hmm.
nobody can
Yeah, for
tell
me,
you otherwise.
uh, success in this realm is not economic for me. Success is in creating something that I'm satisfied with, that I feel is the best that I can do, and I can't wait to put it out there.
That's a terrific sentiment and probably the best advice to give young people because they feel all this pressure. I need to
Mm-hmm.
have a career. I need to make money. I'm not quite sure about my own skills and I need to build
Mm-hmm.
those up. And instead of just sitting on my ass and doing it, I'm overthinking it. I'm a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
And then nothing really gets done. So how are you going to run if you can't even crawl yet? Best way is just to hit the ground and go for it.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're a fan of peanuts. I think most of us are. What we think of as peanuts really didn't evolve until the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. Charles Schulz did that strip in relative obscurity in very few papers for 8 or 9 years. And it looked very different in the beginning, and the characters and the character of the strip were very different. But you have to do it and evolve until your own style emerges. One of the things about Peanuts that is uh, people think of it as part of the strip is the way he lettered it. Right? He had a very distinctive lettering style, but in the beginning he tried to letter like everyone else.
Right.
If you look, even that evolved until when we think of the Peanuts lettering, that didn't even start to take shape until the late 50s, early 60s.
That's a great point, which is it evolves with your trials and tribulations as a writer and as you get it out there and as you
Mm-hmm.
build up your own momentum.
Right.
Chester Gould, the daddy behind Dick Tracy,
Mm-hmm.
he submitted a packet of the comic strip to the editor, the publisher of the Chicago Tribune every week for years, and he just mailed off a manila envelope
Mm-hmm.
to the he just addressed it to the publisher and editor in chief of the Chicago Tribune and just mailed it. And his phone rang after years of doing it, and they said, come on in. We like it. We're going to change the name from Inspector Tracy to Dick Tracy,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a comic strip. Boom, like
Mm-hmm.
over. So these things do happen, but to your point, there's no such thing as an overnight sensation. You need to keep grinding it.
That's right. Until it becomes what it's meant to be.
And that's probably the best sentiment of all, which is pursue your destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Within it is your character and everything that's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let the bastards get you down, let alone
Right.
your own pocketbook. And if
Right.
true here and you love what you do, then just do it.
Yeah. And also over time, you're gonna have more lived experience, and you're gonna use that to inform the strip or whatever it is you're creating.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's very interesting with a set of characters who are started off in their early 20s when I was in my early 20s. And now I have 40 years of hindsight, and the characters are still in their 20s. My characters have aged 1 year for every decade I've done the strip. But it's, instead of being ripped from the headlines now, it's like looking back, and sometimes seeing a train wreck coming, but knowing that the character won't avoid it, even though you would, because the character is still in his 20s, and you can say look out, but they don't listen.
Yes, and that's one of the glorious aspects of it that as you get older, you judge yourself less and you're less self-critical in a way that that constricts your creativity, and you
Yeah,
embrace your own experiences and even your own failures, and those
that's
get
right.
exposed into your characters
Hmm.
in a way that is really liberating, and it infuses your creativity with energy too. You
Right.
might not
Yeah.
have
Well,
had in your youth.
that's right. And it gives me some perspective on the characters that I didn't have when I was in the midst of living their experience. Now I can look back fondly, and sometimes in horror.
And I feel blessed too at this point where I've had these various incarnations in my own life, these various phases, and some of them been radically different. So I was a bar manager in Chicago. I was a bouncer at an OTB. I've done the corporate stoogery for years. I was an agency guy for years. I'm now a consultant. So I've done professional and personal things, had lots of different types of relationships. And when I was living within it, I was trying to write too. But it's
Hmm.
sometimes all one big maelstrom of emotion.
Right.
Now that I'm a little bit older and I'm kind of chilling and I could look back at a lot of that and I've gained perspective, they're percolating up in my characters and in my scenarios in ways that are just I feel I have so much that I would just want to get out after living through all that it's a real blessing to have all that energy and enthusiasm without the heavy youthful judgment and perfectionism that
Hmm.
used to be a little bit asphyxiating when I was younger. So it's a cool place to be.
You're in a good place.
Writers keep cranking. More mature writers cherish the fact that you have all those lived experiences that you could channel into your creativity, and don't judge yourself by the metric of sales or money. If you love doing it and it's coming out, just let it out. We're here right now. The clock is always ticking, and every page drawn or typed is your connection to the world and back to yourself. And I think that that's a great place to be. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, we've had the celebrated cartoonist, Jeff Krell. We'll have links in the description below so you could buy his stuff and check him out. And thanks so much for making time, Jeff. Like, comment, share, subscribe to Ink vs. Algorithm, where we talk to cartoonists like Jeff, poets, writers. And if you want to be on the podcast, you're a fledgling writer or experienced, and you want your story told and you want to have a good conversation with Mookie, here you go. There's a link below for you to reach out to us as well. Thank you so much.